Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony. I am an art student in Wilmington, Delaware. I go to school in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at an atelier known as Studio Incaminati. I guess the goal for this demonstration is hopefully someone looks at this and says, hey, you know what? This really helps me. Okay, so with this pose today, there's a nice gesture with the cant of the shoulders and the hips. This leg coming out was difficult to capture, and this leg planted was also difficult. Right, so normally I would start with a nice little gesture, right? Find that flow of the figure. We have that head coming down here, that back, and then the tilt of the pelvis, and that leg being firmly planted. This is just like a center line. This is really a center line. I'm following the center line down here, and this is more of like the contour of that leg, right? And I know that the shoulders tilt this way, the hips tilt this way. We can come out and place the rib cage out here. Like that's where I know my rib cage is, and this is where my pelvis is. The leg is firmly planted. Her other leg comes out at this angle and then it gets planted, but this foot is forward, so it gives the appearance of the heel being higher up than the heel here. And remember, this one's planted. This one's like pretty straight down. This one only looks shorter because it's further away from us in space. So you have to capture that distance while also remaining true to the pose, without it like making it look weird. I remember the knees, this one was like slightly, like very so slightly higher than this one, which also placed this leg a little bit further in space, making it shorter, or this thigh in here. But this side of the rib cage came down. Her head was kind of forward, maybe a little bit straighter. I'm gonna put the head here. It's just like a little block. Let's call that a head. There. This comes down here. She's a little bit wider here, and that hip was a little bit more canted. Now this is a very descriptive piece. With that little poke of the pelvis. You don't want to do that too early, like I did, but I just got carried away. The reason being is because this tilt is more dramatic than this one, and whenever we start our poses, you want to like make it more dramatic, enhance the gesture, and as the drawing goes on, you correct it. Series of corrections. So I'm gonna place this tilt a little bit higher up, and that lengthens that thigh for me. And I remember the arm kind of coming out this way, coming out. I'm gonna go ahead and put some masses down, because this whole back was like in shadow. This whole back, pretty much. And I'm kind of doing this at an angle, so it's a little wonky. This initial drawing is going to be a lot more interesting than this drawing here. And the reason being is because this is so abstract and it's so like enhanced in the gesture that it automatically makes it look a lot more interesting than this one. This one's a lot further along. There's a lot more information happening and it's a lot more solidified. But because this is so simple and so enhanced beyond this one, it's gonna make it look a lot more interesting. But that's good. That's good because that's where the strength of this drawing comes from. It's from this abstraction and this being so far pushed. And what I'm doing now is I'm setting some masses up so I can adjust and correct the drawing even further than what I have it. And I remember that the model was very much in shadow during this pose. I'm gonna push this a little bit, and that little like tilt of the head kind of lines up with where that thigh comes out. So I'm gonna follow that, and I notice that this needs to come down just a little bit, just a little bit. It's probably gonna get, yeah, just trimmed up just a little bit. Remember, we're overstating our shadows. You see the shadow in here. It's not being covered all the way here, but what you don't know is that I did put the shadow all the way up here when I put it in here. And the reason being is because this light informs us of some of the anatomy. So we can use that anatomy to draw out the light and get a much more structured drawing out of that. I noticed that this, I didn't capture it as well, but the trap kind of comes up to that angle. So I'm gonna draw it in here and try to capture it a little bit better. Get the front of the face going. And that chin kind of comes down to where this trap and shoulder is. And there's this thing that happens with the shoulder. Now you have this bone at the top of the shoulder where the deltoid connects on the top. So that top facing deltoid, that shoulder that wraps around and attaches to the, I think it's the humerus. I forget which bone it is. But there's a bone in here that the shoulder attaches to. It comes behind and attaches to the spine of the scapula here. And this bone up top connects to that spine of the scapula on the back and wraps around and connects to your collarbone. Now this piece of information, it's known as the acromion process, that top of the shoulder. That is a landmarker that we can use to gauge proportion and inform us of anatomy, right? And you'll notice that a lot of the time when the shoulder connects to that, it pops. Like that little bone just like pops up over the skin, and the shoulder kind of comes out over and then tucks a little bit whenever it's whenever you get like a good side view of that shoulder. So it's sort of, if we draw it up here, if this is my acromion process, that shoulder will come out, down, and just tuck ever so slightly. And you'll see that it connects this way. And then you have the rest of that arm. And this will be the tricep in there. And we can use that to gauge different landmarkers for the drawing. So here in that acromion process, you can get a nice little gauge. So it'll meet right here, and that's right about where the gluteus maximus connects. Sometimes that acromion process will meet with the back of the heel. I mean, her foot was further out, so you can't really use that as reliable information, but not in this pose at least. A lot of poses will give you that information. And as I say that, I can see that I need to bring this heel up a little bit more. And she kind of looks, in this pose, she kind of looks like she's leaning a little bit. So what I'm gonna do to correct that is straighten out this leg. We could probably bring up the hip a little bit. So at this point, we have this very rough draft of what we're looking at, right? Obviously, it's nothing compared to the actual live model, but I can't record while there's a live model. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at these light masses in here, and we're gonna try to construct the light mass is in this drawing based on the anatomy that we can see in the light here. What that means, just a short version, is if I see this trap comes up here, still got paint on that, I'm gonna bring that trap out from the light here. Now the trap connects to the other side of that acromion process, goes up to the neck, and kind of like funnels in to the back of the head. I could probably get this head a little bit more accurate. You can use your paper towel to draw out and correct. If she had this like ponytail right there. And I'm just placing things down as an indicator of what they're supposed to be, right? They don't have to be 100% accurate right now, and they're not supposed to be. I probably should bring this knee down a little bit more, because remember, her thigh is facing forward, like it's going out into space because of this cant of the hips. With that little tilt being this way, that pushes the thigh forward, and that brings this leg up just ever so slightly. And that's because all that weight is on this leg. It looks just a tiny bit shorter. This one looks forward in space because she's extending it. And I have to keep that in mind in this drawing, because that's what I see here. So I'm gonna bring out this light. I remember, yes, in there. Yeah, the soleus that comes underneath the calf muscle up here. That's probably way too thick. That's probably way too thick. So I'm just gonna set a boundary. Still probably too thick, but that's okay, because I can adjust. You don't want to stay too long in one area, because you could get it as accurate as possible, right? You could get that little area so freaking accurate, but if you're not hopping around and comparing that area to the rest of the drawing, you're gonna end up with a really accurate calf that is completely disproportionate to the rest of the drawing. You gotta make sure you're bouncing around, getting different pieces together. I know that this thigh comes in, and that looks a little too thin. So what am I seeing over here that's not translating over here? I'm gonna bring this back out just a little bit. Just a little bit. And I'm gonna push this forward, because I remember that when I saw this thigh in here, it kind of came out through the shoulder. So I have to make sure that lines up too, and now it does. It's a good idea to step back and like get the whole picture of what you're seeing. I can bring the front of her torso a little bit in. Remember, I'm just putting shapes down. I'm just putting shapes. Like, that's just a rectangle that goes down. But the further along I get and the more accurate I get to rendering what I see, it'll look more and more like an arm. But in the construction of it, you have to remain simple, or else the strength is lost. Now this elbow lines up just above the little bend. Now remember, that elbow was just a little bit higher than where this elbow was. So right here, it looks a little high. So what I can do is just push that down. So what piece of anatomy can I look at now to draw out from the light? Well, the biggest thing I see right now is the back in here. Now, remember that deltoid comes to the back and connects at the point of the end of the spine of the scapula. The scapula is this like triangle trapezoid shape on your back, and it juts out and creates that light in there. And the reason it juts out is because her arm is on her hip. And when you have your arm on your hip, it's gonna push that bony plate out and create a plane shift. And the light will capture that plane shift. That's what's happening in here. See in here, like that whole thing in here, right here, that's where that deltoid connects. This is where that spine of the scapula is, right in there. and it follows the tilt of the shoulders. And I only capture that tilt because of the emphasis of the gesture in the beginning of the drawing. And I can go to the other scapula and draw that light. And then this arm is a lot more relaxed, but you still get that plane shift because the bony landmark is kind of just slightly protruding. Slightly protruding. And when you draw out the light while thinking about the anatomy, it informs you later for when you put the anatomy in with paint, or when you start painting in the lights. Now, the light also kind of caught the left glute here, and a little bit of that oblique rounding about at the corner. So where does the top of that glute meet? It meets right where that hand is. Right where the hand hits here, that's where the top of that glute is. So I'm gonna keep that in mind when I draw this out. And I know that the glute kind of comes in. That muscle will like wrap in and down. So I know I can sculpt this in that direction just a little bit. And I know that the oblique kind of comes down, out, and around. So when I sculpt this, I'm thinking that I'm turning the plane to get that effect. And we're not done. We're not done at all. We're not ready to move on to the next stage. And the reason being is because we're using these shapes to get a much more accurate representation of the drawing and of what we're seeing. These shadows in here, they're just shapes, but the more you tweak them, the more accurate you get. I'm gonna put this little shape in here for the hand, because that's where her hand was. And there's this nice little shadow that comes down that I forgot to put in. Like I said, drawing is just a series of corrections. And what I did here is I put in just a little dark accent. A dark accent is going to be like the darkest in value that your drawing will get. And what that does is that informs me of the drawing just a little bit more. So I know that this little marker is where the glutes meet. And I know like this one in here, that's the bottom of the gluteus maximus. So I'm gonna put that in here. You don't want to like go too heavy with your dark accents either, because then it starts to be too much information. Push this in to emphasize the bow of the leg. We're gonna bring this down because my calf is shorter than what I had it. Remember, whenever you spot these differences in your drawing, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't get so caught up with, oh no, it's wrong. Oh my God, I'm never gonna, no, shut up. Tell yourself, hey, there's something I can correct. That's great, because that means I can make my drawing more accurate. I can get my drawing to look even better. You don't have to hate yourself for not getting something accurate on the first try, because since when does anybody, right? This is all of our first time living on this planet. And if this is your first time drawing or painting or whatever you do, tell yourself, hey, it's my first fucking time. I don't need to get so mad at myself. I don't need to get so upset. You got this. I remember this leg being a little bit more bowed, right? So what that means is that the leg has this like little, there's like hardly any space. So the thigh kind of comes in, right? And then the calf is very gestured. So it kind of like bows out. And this looks a little like straight, right? So it looks a little too stiff. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring this in and I'm gonna kind of like gesture this out a little bit more. If I push this back, push this forward, that's a little too much. That's a little too much. But that's gonna help me get that effect. And I just gotta like push this in. If I push this back, that means the front of this foot has to come back too. So if one thing moves, so does another. You gotta be mindful of that as your drawing progresses. Now we know that leg is far too wide right now. That's okay. All that means is I gotta thin it out. I gotta thin it out. And I can place that Achilles right here. And that firmly plants that foot there. It already looks a lot better. It looks like she's leaning on that leg instead of almost tipping over. I love being able to correct it. And when you get that, when you finally get the accuracy down and it looks exactly the way you see it, it's such a satisfying moment. And guess what? You did it. You didn't need to beat yourself up over it. You fucking did it. I'm gonna emphasize this shadow in here where the soleus is, and that little shadow that goes over. There's a light mass in here, and that's the side of the gluteus. I know that the hand was in light, so I'm gonna bring out that hand just a little bit. I'm gonna push this little bit of the thigh out, and I'm gonna push the outside in just a little bit, because the thigh kind of like has this little, when it comes down off the pelvis, it'll like go under, and it'll go under here, it'll push out and then come down. And then the quads come down, and the quads will ever so slightly hook down again. Quads will hook down again into the knee, into the tibia. Now that leg is a little too thick. That calf is just a little bit too thick. So what I can do, I could probably push this in, because I'm noticing that the calf here is a little lower, and it's a little thinner, and that pushes the thigh out just a little bit more in the direction that we want it to go. And this leg is already a lot more informed than this leg is. And I'm noticing that this shoulder is a little bit lower. I'll probably bring it out or draw it out just a little bit more. Now in class we're going over drawing out the light in paint. So we're painting these light masses in, and thinking of the anatomy when you draw them out with your paper towel only informs you further when you're putting in those light masses with the paint. You see, now that as I say that, I'm noticing this mass in here that I forgot about, that I got caught up. That's why it's a good idea to step back. It's a good idea to analyze where you're at, because you might fall behind somewhere that you didn't realize you were falling behind in. When you take that second to be like, okay, what's next? You ask that question, like, what's next, or what am I looking for right now? It will come to you. It will absolutely come to you. And the success of this drawing is reevaluating the mishaps from this one. This is like a thumbnail almost. And I can come back to it in this one. It's a little more gestural. It's a little bit more solid. The structure's more prominent. It's much more well informed. And that's the whole purpose of going back, reestablishing your fundamentals, revisiting your mishaps. It's not about, oh my God, I messed up. It's about, okay, I can get better at this. I can get better. And I like getting better. And you can apply that to anything you do. If you're a pizza guy, you know, if your first dough is just fucked up, you can go back, redo it, start from the basics. What did you learn about spreading your dough? That's what we're doing. We're returning to the foundations. We're relearning how to spread our dough. I'm actually going to put a dark accent against the skin here. And what that does, it separates the edge of the glute and the arm. That little point there. I'm gonna push this out, or push that glute in just a little bit. I'm gonna reestablish the shadow. But that little dark accent separates it too. Now we can see that, oh, that's the edge of the glute. Maybe there's like this, there's little shadow shape in here. And that's where that great trochanter pulls on the skin and forces this area into shadow. Look at this, look at this. I made a mouth for him. It's pretty nice, it's pretty nice. I think I'm gonna end it there today. Maybe next time I'll go into the lights, but I hope this gave you a good idea of how to implement your fundamentals, use your shapes in an abstract and meticulous way to gauge your proportions. I hope the little bits of anatomy helped you understand where to place certain things or how to draw out the light using your anatomy. Yeah, I hope everybody had a good time. Again, my name is Anthony. I live in Wilmington, Delaware. I go to school in Philly at an art atelier known as Studio Incaminati. All right, thank you for joining.